Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you're tuning in from. And in fact, welcome. And let me see if I could get some of you to give me a little bit of information. Where are you tuning in from? And what's your goal from our time together today? So if you would put that into the chat box, please. What is your goal for what you want from our time together today? I'll give it a couple of seconds here to um, let some of the ideas start coming in. Good, good, good. Awesome. Okay. All right. Got some good ideas here. All right. So let me see what I can do to help answer some of those questions and achieve some of those goals. So, first of all, welcome to 5 Ways to Massive Profits. Now, in business, time is your most valuable asset. So first of all, thank you for sharing your time with me today. And what I want to do is make sure I help you achieve the very most results you possibly can in use of your time. So, who's heard the old saying, you can make more money, but you can't make your more time? So what I want to do is focus in on activities and ideas that will generate for you the very most effective use of your time and effort. So what we want to refrain from is thinking of business as busyness. So how you invest your time is one of the most important keys to your business success. So what I'm going to work on today is to reward your time with some of the simplest, easiest, and fastest ways to increase your income. And I'm actually going to share a couple of examples that some of my clients have experienced as we've used some of these ideas going forward. All right, so let's get started here. What is your definition of a business? Think about this. There's a lot of ways to define a business. What is your definition of a business? Now, some of the things I'll hear about is I do transactions, I make income by doing work for people, and all these kinds of things. And many people have this perception that a business is just doing transactions. Well, you can do transactions in any number of ways. You could be a for-commission salesperson and you're doing transactions. Is that a business? And some people think of it as analogous to a business. There's another way to think about a business, and what I want to do is share that. This is the way Action Coach tends to define a business, and it gives it a little bit of a different kind of feel. So what I'm going to share here is Action Coach's definition of a business first, so that we've got kind of a context of what we're going to do for the rest of this webinar. So another way to think about business is as a commercial, profitable enterprise that works without you, the owner. Now, what's the context of this? All right, so a commercial profitable enterprise, that certainly fits the definition of doing transactions, making money just transaction after transaction after transaction after transaction. But most people that live transaction to transaction really get stuck and don't ever get past a certain volume of transactions based on their tempo, their temperament, their personality, and their ability to stay focused on what's next, what's next, what's next, what's next. What I hope to share with you today is more of a strategic process that can take it beyond just a series of transactions. We tend to like to think of business more as an asset where you build a machine that can essentially do the transactions for you without you being tied up, and you can be more in a strategic mode, if you will, than a transaction mode. Now, let's start with your context. Where are you right now with your business? So what revenue is in, and write this down on a piece of paper. What revenue is your business generating today? Where do you live? What kind of a car do you drive? What kind of investments have you made so far? Do you have upcoming travel plans, and what are they? What kinds of activities does your family enjoy? And how much time are you working in the business right now? And sit down and write down some of the answers to those questions. And then let's think about this out 5 years. What revenue do you want your business generating in 5 years? Where do you want to be living in 5 years? What do you want to be driving in 5 years? What investments will you have made? Where have you traveled in the last 5 years, and where do you want to travel going in the future? What's your family enjoying now? And how much time are you now working in your business? So think about these two different things. And if the answers are the same, then you've got to think about, are you doing things in a way that helps you grow? Now, this is where I kind of want to share a story of a client I'm working with right now. I've been working with for 2 years, in fact. And when he first came to me, he's a loan officer at a local mortgage company as an employee, but he's 100% commission. And he came to me, he's been running at a particular run rate year after year after year. He's been in the business for a lot of years, so he has pretty good skills in how to be a good loan officer. He's obviously always learning something new, but he's been there long enough that he's got pretty good grasp on what he's got to do as a loan officer. Now the question is, how does he get more income out of what he's doing? So we sat down at the very beginning of our process, and I asked him what were his goals. And he had a goal. He had published a goal to the company of 25% more than what he had done the year before, and the year before that, and the year before that. So we started to talk about that and talked about what he was doing and how he was doing it, how he did his work. And as we got into it, I challenged him to rethink his goal and let's set something a little bit more interesting. And more interesting took us to a number that was about 66, 67% of what he had been doing, 67% more than what he had been doing before. And I said, okay, that's an interesting goal. And we set about re-looking over the next year, re-looking at how he was doing his business. Not how was he being a loan officer, but how was he doing his work. We redefined a lot of the activities. We found ways to get work done differently. And at the end of that year, he had not fully achieved the 67%, but he had blown away the original 25% goal probably mid-year. And we got him to 60% increase just by rethinking what his goal was and then focusing on the actions he was taking to achieve that kind of a goal. Now, we have since set a higher goal. Now, we didn't get quite so aggressive. We didn't try to increase another 67%. We really only went up probably about 15%. We're reaching a stage where there are some limits. He does have limits on how much time he wants to spend in his business, and that starts to set some numbers. He could have doubled his business if we weren't limiting the amount of time he wants to spend in his business, but we had a limit. And so we started to look again at how he's looking at his business. And we are on track. As of last week, we are on track to achieve that number completely. Well, if we miss it, we're going to miss it by a very small amount. So he has nearly doubled his personal income on a commission-only basis in 2 years just by redefining his goals and then sitting down and taking a look at the actions that he was taking. Now, the categories of work we stayed in, we will be talking about the formula that we used with him to achieve that as we go through the rest of this presentation. So the context will be the same. So this is really a core and key piece of this game, is setting a goal. Now, where does a goal come from? Well, a goal does not magically appear. It does not walk up to you and tap you on the shoulder and say, here I am. You have to sit down and say, this is what I want. This is what I want it to be like. And this is what I'm willing to do to get that. And then commit yourself to going and getting that. That is the process. There is no magic day where a goal walks up to you. You have to drive the goal. You have to decide where is the destination you want to take yourself and your business to. And this is a growing process. This isn't just growing income. This is growing as a person to make this all happen. Now, within that, there are a handful of keys to business success. We're not going to talk about all of them today, but I'm going to provide a good list of what they are. Leverage is a big deal. Leverage is a big piece of what we talked about with that particular client that I just mentioned. People is an ultimate leverage, looking at how to delegate work out to somebody else. There's obviously systems and checklists and the things that you do to make it easy so you don't have to rethink every time how you're going about what you're doing. Technology has been a big deal. I can remember fax machines coming out. Think about all of the changes that have happened since then. All of the tools that have appeared that make including this one. How long ago have we been able to do webinars like this in quite such an easy way? This is magic technology. And then sales and marketing. And sales and marketing is a really important concept here. The marketing process is key to making your business grow in many cases. And the sales and marketing aspect is what we're going to spend a lot of our time talking about today. Now, let's start with that one. Sales and marketing, what is it? Now, many people think of sales and marketing as an expense. Why do they think that way? Well, because they've got to put money out for it. Those people who use financial statements and read their P&L knows that the sales and marketing expenses are both recorded in what's called fixed expenses. And they work their best to keep this cost, if you will, to a minimum. The problem is, this is a really big deal in terms of leverage. This is where you really get your opportunity to expand your ability to get more customers. If you're just beginning your business, this is absolutely vital. If you've been in your business for a while, you don't need quite as much of it, but you need a pretty good amount to keep new customers coming into the pool so that you can have word of mouth referrals later from raving fan customers. Now you can ask yourself, how many raving fans do you have now? How many raving fans would you like to have? And what are you doing to go about getting more of them? And there's a couple of answers to that. And providing good work is obviously one of them. But it's not enough by itself. You have to have done good work for enough people for you to have developed enough raving fans. We tend to think of sales and marketing as an investment. What is an investment? So if you think about it in an investment as a process of putting money in to get a result out, then that is what an investment is. And what you want to be doing is getting enough money in so that you can get enough results out. And you can calculate how many dollars you want out and therefore know how many dollars you want to put in. I often encourage people to think in terms of 10% of revenue as a really good starting point to build a good, strong marketing process. Now, then you have to do some magic work like testing and measuring in order to know that the particular methods that you're using work work well enough. So it's not just enough to put an advertisement out. How well does that advertisement perform? Is that advertisement actually doing what it is you want it to be doing? So how many leads are you getting? Are those leads the right kind of leads? Are those the leads that will actually produce the customers, the kinds of customers that will buy from you again and again and again and again at the right price? Or are those the customers that really complain all the time, don't like what you're doing, don't like your price, and carrying on? Maybe it's time to sit down and take a very close look at that advertisement and ask yourself the question, can I redesign this to get a better set of clients so that I can make the kind of income I'm looking for? Because obviously this particular advertisement is not producing the results that I need. And there are many stories, story after story after story on this. I have this happen with my clients all the time. A particular roofing client that I worked with starting several years ago, and I'm still working with today. When we first started working together, we were looking at how he was marketing. And he was doing a really good job of investing in marketing, but he was only looking at his investments about once a year. So when the market slowed down in December, he would start to pull out the results for the year and compare notes and take a look and see did he get his money's worth. What we did is we started a process of looking at his results once a month. And as we looked at those results, we realized that he wasn't really doing 8 things. He was really doing about 17 things. And so we looked at each of the, and part of the reason of that is he had used the phrase internet to cover several things that he was doing. When we broke all those things down and took a look at how much he was investing in each one and what he was getting for leads and how much revenue he was getting and how much gross profit he was getting from each one of those methods, then we were able to sit down and say, well, let's stop doing this one, and this one, and refocus our budget into these other things over here. Now, it took us about 4 months to really see results from doing that, but we were able, just in that first year, we were able to increase his revenue from about $700,000 volume to about $1.2 million volume. And by the way, he is just shy of 4 million at this particular point. So we've taken this very same exercise and we've expanded it considerably. This has been a driving process in his business. Everything we did during that growth period is what we're going to talk, the formula we're going to talk about in just a couple of slides here. But I want to build a context to share what can be done and how it can be done. Now, there are actually 2 sides to this marketing concept that you have to think about. Marketing really isn't just advertising for the sake of advertising. There's more to this game. So you want to think about, first of all, how much does it cost me to buy a client? And yes, that's what we're doing. We're advertising to buy a client. In this particular example, let's pretend that you invested $300 in advertising. And yes, I know it's more like $3,000, but for the sake of numbers, let's talk about 300. If you invested 300 in advertisement and you got 10 customers, then you bought each customer for about $30. Now, then the question becomes, how can we make that number lower? How can we make this process more efficient? That can be a case of looking at the advertisement. It can be a case of looking at, just within the advertisement, how good is the headline? How good is the offer? How good is the text explaining what it is that we're doing? How compelling is that advertisement? So what can we do that for $300 gets 11 customers or gets 12 customers? And that's a way that we've got to look at our initial lead generating marketing. And then the other side of this game is lifetime value. So how long does a customer stay with you and continue to buy from you? In this particular example, if a customer spends $550 a year for 6 years, then you think about that, that's really $3,300 of revenue to you. Now we can get into a profitability question, and we will do that in a minute. But what we're looking at first is the revenue, which is what the marketing will bring for you. Now the question is, how do you increase that particular number? One way to do that is look at how do we increase the number of years that he stays with you. If we can increase it from 6 to 7, then we've increased the amount of revenue that customer has brought you. If we can increase the 550 to 600, that increases the amount of revenue that that brings in and profit that that brings into you. Now, if that was based on buying that customer for $30, what's that in terms of investment return to you? So just looking at this number here, $3,300 of lifetime value for a $30 investment, that's a pretty good return on investment, but it could be better. And so there's these two different aspects that we think about in how we generate profit from a given amount of investment in marketing. So this is a context that you really want to be thinking about in every single decision that you make. If I put this money in, what do I need to get out to break even? And then what do I need to break out in order to make this a serious profit? And this is when I work with my clients, these are the kinds of questions that we're sitting down wrestling with, is if I put this in, what can I get out? Is that taking me in the right direction, or do we need to shift it around a little bit to do something a little bit different? So this becomes the game that we sit down and focus on. We're not focusing on how to be better of whatever product that we're producing. We're trying to focus on how do we use that product more effectively so that we can make a better life for ourselves and our family. So this is the basic context of this game. Now, going from there, now we're going to get into a formula that really drives how you can take control of your destiny. And this is how you can go about, in a strategic kind of way, building your business. And this is proven. We do this with about 15,000 businesses per month. Now think about that. If it's proven by 15,000 businesses per month, can that work for you? Now, can it all work for you? Well, it depends on the nature of your specific business. But can you draw benefits from working this formula in your business? The answer is always yes. So let's sit down. And what you're seeing right now on the screen is a screenshot of a form that I use with my clients all the time. When we're sitting down and planning out what we're going to try to accomplish in the next couple of months, usually the next quarter, this is the kind of analysis that we're doing every single time. I'm going to walk you through the basics of the analysis one step at a time so you can see the whole thing. But this is actually a form that we work out. And what you're seeing is on the left is the list of variables. The next column over is the list of values for what is currently happening. And then on the far right are the values that we're going to try to make it become. In between, you'll see a list of lines that says strategic checks. What we're going to do is those are steps of changes that we're going to make in the business, either things we're going to start doing, things we're going to stop doing, things that are new from what's happening in order to create the increases that we want to create. So let's look at the variables. This is a list of key variables. The ones in red, customers, revenue, and profit. Those are the ones most business owners know. And I say most a little bit tongue-in-cheek because some don't. I've actually had customers not know what their revenue was, and I've had people not know what their profit was. But in general, most business owners know how many customers they've got. They know how much revenue that they've got in a particular period, and they know how much profit that they've made from that. In the blue is looking at a way to break that down into smaller chunks. The thing about the customers, the revenue, and the profit is they are really outcomes, and you can't easily create strategies without breaking it down a little bit further. On the other hand, the number of leads can be broken down into discrete strategies. The conversion rate, we can increase that by breaking it down and working on specific strategies. The number of transactions per customer per year, or whatever time period you want, we can sit down and build strategies that increases that number. The average dollar sale, we can build strategies that help us increase that. And the profit margins is really an efficiency factor, and we can look at multitudes of ways to increase profit margins that do not necessarily include just cutting costs. That's the one everybody wants to think about. That's the easy one to do, but you can cut cost and take yourself right out of business very quickly. It's much more effective to get to be in a place where you're increasing sales to grow your business, rather than increase or decrease the amount that you're spending on your business. You do want to be efficient in how you spend, but you don't want to be predatory to your own business. So, how would you like to put some numbers in so that we can see some examples for how this can work for you? So if we start with numbers of leads, and we're going to create a pretend business, what I'm going to suggest to you, pull out a sheet of paper and a pen and write down your numbers. Now, I don't care if you write down last year or last month. You can still get to a year by extrapolating last month to a year just by multiplying by 12. So what were the numbers of leads you generated over the last 12 months? In this particular business, they had 4,000 leads. Now we get into a question, what is a lead? If you've got a database, the names in the database are not leads. You might think of them as suspects. They are people you know. They are not people who have committed to being ready to buy. You might work at, how do I attract them to become people that might want to buy? But right now they are not leads. A lead is somebody who sticks his hand up and says, hey, I'm interested, let's talk. That's a lead. This particular business had 4,000 leads. Has a conversion rate of 25%. That means one out of four leads actually bought, and that generated 1,000 customers over the course of a 12-month period of time. So for that particular business, he was able to generate an average of 2 transactions per customer over the course of a year. Now that some people might have bought just once, some people might have bought 4 or 5 times, but the average came out to about 2 in this particular case. The average dollar sale was $100. And yes, I know that revenues can be all over the map. It could have been that one customer bought for $1 and some other customer bought for $5,000, but the average calculated out to $100 in this particular case. So how much revenue does that generate? On this particular case, 1,000 customers times 2 transactions times $100 is $200,000. Now think about what is your revenue right now, and it scales exactly the same. So where are we at? What's the status of your business at this moment? We'll get to what it could be in a few minutes. Now, profit margin is really an efficiency factor. In this particular case, this business has a 25% profit margin, and that produces a profit of $50,000. So this is a particular small business. Any other business could look different. In fact, most of the businesses that I have, that I work with, are different from these numbers, ranging anywhere from, we'll say, $30,000 up to 5 million. We're exceeding 5 million in a couple of them. So that'll give you kind of a rough range of revenue numbers. Let's think about what we can do to take control of a destiny of this business right now. Now let's pretend we work on those blue variables and we work at increasing each one of them 10% over the course of a year. So this is the rate we would now be at. And think about it in your terms. What would your business be if you increased each of these blue variables by 10%? Think in terms of how could we do that? So if we take the number of leads and we increase it by 10%, and how might we do that? Well, it depends on what he's doing right now. We might improve the caliber of advertising. We might be doing more networking. We might be using email. We might be using social media. We might use radio or TV. These are all kinds of ways to increase the numbers of raw leads. Now, 10% increase takes us to 4,400 leads. What does 10% bring your business to? Now, if we take a look at conversion rate is just a reflection of how good a salesperson are we for the product that we've got inside of the target market we've been working in. Now, perhaps the target market is the wrong target market, and we would have to look at that. But given the target market that you're working at, what's your conversion rate? In this particular case, it's 25%. If we become a little bit better at selling, and some of that is how do we advertise, but if we become a little bit more effective at selling, it's not 25% to 35%, it's only 25% to 27.5%. That's a 10% increase on conversion rate. So how many customers do we now have? No, it's not 1,100, it's 1,210. So we get out of this 27.5% of 4,400 is 1,210 customers. That's a 21% increase of the number of customers that we've got. Now, same thing is true with the number of transactions. If we take that number of transactions and we can work it a way to get people to come back, attract people to come back and want to buy from us a little bit more, we can increase that number of transactions from 2 to 2.2. That's a 10% increase, is going to 2.2. Similarly, with the average dollar sale, what additional items could we help them buy? What are the upsell items that we could help them buy? Could we increase our prices 5% and do things that increase this average dollar sales? Any number of, in fact, I've got a list of more than 30 variables on this particular item. There's a whole bunch of different ways to increase the average dollar sale, but if we can increase it 10%, we go to 110. Now, what's the new revenue for this particular business? And now to calculate the new revenue, it's not 2,200 or 220,000, it's 1,210 times 2.2 times 110, which produces $292,820 of new revenue, and that's a 46% increase. So think about your business. What are the numbers in your business up to this point? And if we had increased each of those variables 10%, what would we have accomplished? Similarly with profit margin. If the profit margin is 25%, is it possible with a little bit more work at how efficiently you perform your work, we could increase to 27.5%? Remember, I talked about a client who was a loan officer who increased his processes, and this is a lot of what we worked on, is efficiencies. We worked on other things on this list, but efficiencies on how he did his work was a big deal, and that's how we got him up to about a 60% increase in the first 12 months. So in this particular case, 27.5% of 292,000 works out to about an 80% or an $80,000 profit. Now that's a 61% increase. What would that look like in your business? Have you calculated that out? And I would highly recommend that you do that, because that's what's plausible if we sit down and look at your business in a very systematic, step-by-step kind of way. So as I said, that's a 46% increase in your revenue. It's a 61% increase in your profits. This is all scalable. What difference would that mean in your lifestyle if we increase those numbers in that way? Now, it does sit down and require you to take a look at things differently. It requires you to do things differently. But if you're willing to do that, 61% increase year over year over year is possible. An example of that, what if we worked at it for several years and we worked at it long enough at 10% at a time that we increased each of those variables 100%. Now this is a year over year over year over year exercise. So 4,000 leads, what's an 100% increase? It's 8,000. What's a 100% increase on conversion rate? It goes to 50%. What are the new numbers of customers? Well, the new numbers of customers is 4,000. Think you could handle 4,000 customers? Could you handle 4 times the number of customers than you're handling right now? And the answers might be yes, or the answers might be no. If the answer is no, then we've got to figure out different ways to accomplish that. Now, the number of transactions, we started with 2. With a 100% increase, that's 4. With the average dollar sale, we started with 100 and we increased to 200. Is that possible? Yes, I've had clients do that kind of thing. They've been able to increase their average dollar sale that much. That required looking at things differently. That required looking at their target market closely. In some cases, they had to evolve the target market a little bit so that they were able to achieve that. But that was well within the possibilities of what they were able to accomplish. Now, what does that do to the revenue? Well, the revenue in this case went from 200,000 to 3.2 million. Think about that for a minute. What would happen in your business if we worked at it for several years in a systematic, step-by-step kind of way so that we found a path so that you could generate that kind of revenue? What would your profit look like? This particular case, 25% profit margin increase goes to 50%. And in this particular owner was able to get to 1.6 million in profit. What do you think about your business? Could you put that into your life in a way that would improve what you're doing now? Remember, we talked about what was your lifestyle 5 years ago? What could your lifestyle be 5 years from now? What do you want from your business? And this is a path that can be taken in a systematic step-by-step way. And I've watched person after person after person look at this formula and say, yeah, that's nice, and never do anything with it. What I'd really like to see is people who want to do stuff. This is where Action Coach's vision of world abundance comes from, is how do we build a process that more businesses, more business owners can build these kinds of results. Is that something that's interesting to you? Do you want to build these kinds of results? Then we've got to work at how do we accomplish these kinds of actions. All right. Is that really possible to do in your business? That's a question that you've got to answer for yourself. These are the things, the decisions you've got to make. Do you want those kinds of numbers badly enough that you're willing to step out of how you've always been doing them and change to how you could be doing them and doing them a little bit differently? Dreams can and do come true. It's a little bit of a case of deciding that that's what you want to do. You've got to think a little bit more like an entrepreneur. I don't mean like transactions, I mean strategically. You've got to think about your business in a different kind of way. What is your plan for the future? You've got to change the way you do things now, because if you keep doing what you've always done, you're going to keep getting the results that you always got. And I kind of love Simpson. Anyway, hold on to your dreams. They are real. So let's think about it. That particular loan officer I mentioned a little while ago, when we set his 67% increase in goal, we had another constraint. We just didn't have a financial goal. We also had a goal that he was going to be able to spend time coaching his daughter's soccer team. So goals can be set with those kind of constraints in mind, and they can be achieved if you're willing to do things a little bit different. And by the way, he not only successfully coached his daughter's soccer team, they successfully coached them to a championship and spent a week away from being a loan officer while they were out playing championship ball games. And that is a real kind of thing that you can think about. They still get weeks of vacation and run down to Disney World and have fun with the family. That is still part of the equation, and that can be included in how you think about this to stay attached to the important people. You don't have to be a slave to your business. You can make the business work for you. And it takes looking at it a little bit differently, but you can make it work for you. Quoting Jim Rohn, never wish your life were easier. Wish that you were better. Work harder on yourself than you do on your job. So it's not about what you know. And we've just spent a lot of time talking about academically how you can use information in a different way to achieve different kinds of results. It's about what you do with what you know to accomplish things. And so I'm going to make an offer, because you're here today, I'm going to make an offer to help you take an initial action step. I'm going to offer one free 1-hour coaching session, let you test drive this kind of process, and you can see how this can work in your business. In your specific case, I would do that here in my office. This is my contact information. You can use that to connect with me and make an appointment to schedule a 1-hour event. And yes, we can talk this through. I will probably need you to fill out a questionnaire so I have a basis so I know a little bit about your business. This is about your business, not about my process. So I have to understand where you're at with your business, and that gives me some clues as to what are the things we can do with it that will get you where you want to go. So that's my offer to you today. And for all practical purposes, now it's time for you to get into action. And what I'm going to ask you to do is I'm going to open this up for questions and answers. And so I'm going to ask you, if you've got questions, please put them into the chat box and let me see what I can do to help answer them. I don't see any new questions coming in, so I'll give it about another 20 or 30 seconds here. And just as a tidbit on the side, I will be sending the recording out to those people who registered for this event, and I'd be happy to share. Of course, if you want to schedule a time, you can respond to that email. That should be coming out sometime today. Depends a little bit on how my schedule goes today. I don't see any questions, so I want to thank you all for attending, and that will be the end of the meeting. Thank you all. Have a great day.